Before you sit down, if we could just have a moment of silence in remembrance of 9/11. Thank you all.
Speaking of that, the fire department did a nice ceremony this morning. It's good.
All right, have we had a chance to look over the meeting minutes from our last meeting?
I have, and I have no corrections, and I would make a motion to approve the minutes of August 28th.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Smith, aye.
Krantz and I.
Newman, aye. All right, first up, we have an appointment of a part-time police officer.
So the Cliff Notes is, I would be asking the board to appoint former officer, retired officer Scott Johnson as a part-time officer. The extended version is, we have a hierarchy of officers in the department. We have the traffic constables that just do traffic work. We have special police officers like retired Detective Dave Johnson and Officer Blakeney from Worcester PD, who are still in uniform, still carry a gun, still use a police cruiser and have arrest powers, but they still only do traffic details. Scott, for whatever reason, would like to continue to work a couple shifts here and there. As I said, when he retired, he was known to pick up shifts when nobody else could get one. So in order for him to do that, he has to be a part-time officer rather than a constable or a special officer. So if the board would see fit with his 32 years of experience, I'd ask that he be appointed as a part-time officer so that we can still utilize him for details and for patrol shifts.
He's just really sick of doing the honey-do list.
It's my time.
It didn't take long. It didn't take long.
3 weeks.
So would this be per diem or set hours?
Yeah, just per diem. So the way the contract's written, all of the shifts go through the full-time officers first and then to the part-time. We haven't had a part-time officer in probably 20-something years, and because of the way police officer standards rewrote things, they're kind of a dying breed anyway. In the old days, you would go to a limited academy, and then you'd get a job part-time, and you'd work for a couple of years and try to get on full-time. Now we're all trained to the same standards, so people getting out of the academy generally are just going to full-time jobs. Nobody's really getting into the part-time line of work, so the only people you're gonna see taking them is the ones that are still healthy when they retire from the normal service. So yeah, it would just be on call when one of the other officers did one of his shifts.
And would this help reduce the overtime?
A little bit, yeah. The way the contract's written, because where Scott was at, he would get what his straight pay rate was when he retired. It would not be at an overtime rate, correct? So a little bit.
Any questions from the board?
I'm all set. My only question is, would be why. Although I've retired twice and still working, so.
Just to get out of the house. It's driving me nuts.
Oh, great.
Well,
Now we have
during the
something.
day.
She's not even home, so we can't even blame it on her.
I think you should retract that. It's driving me nuts. I don't think we need a nut on the police force.
She specifically?
Just, I'm all set.
I would make a motion that we appoint former officer Scott Johnson to current part-time officer Johnson.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Smith, aye.
Krantz and I.
Newman, aye.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And if not,
It's more like 60.
yeah.
Chris, I have a point of order. Should we be swearing in or doing our meeting as well?
Yes.
Okay, so we should,
All right.
right? So
Yep, Chair Bershad, if you would like to call your meeting to order.
we're calling our meeting to order. Roll call. Wish I had here. Did not hear you. So, okay, so now we're also meeting, I don't know what time? 6:35.
And is Chair Grady,
Yes, right here.
would you like to call your meeting to order, please?
I would as well, and we have 3 members of the Recreation Committee.
4. Counting yourself.
Oh, 4, yes. Can't forget about myself.
All right. So first we have a presentation for field study for some new fields up at the Griffin Complex, potential new fields up at the Griffin Complex.
So just a little introduction. A few years ago, funds were approved at town meeting to take a look at this kind of holistically to see if it's something that we wanted to look at to change either the layout or how it is based on the usage. And that kind of went by the wayside with COVID. It was approved right before that, or right during that. I don't know if it was 19 or 20. So we were finally able to revive that. Folks that were involved would be Sherry, Andy, Ryan, me. I know you had attended a few of the meetings, and we had sent out an RFP and had a couple responses, Activitas. So we have Jonathan and, Olivia. Here tonight. So they've been working with us since late spring, late winter, early spring, somewhere in there. Things kind of fell off the map with summer, but now we're here with the somewhat final versions of what the study had come out to be, with a couple different options. We're not obviously going to look at any final votes tonight, but just to at least put them on the map of where we are and what options are out there. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it's good, sir.
Yeah. Anything from you, Sherry? Brian? Andy? Kirsten? All right.
All right, we're ready for you.
Thank you very much. So once again, my name is Jonathan Sharp from Activitas. I'm with Olivia Messenger. So we're a landscape architecture and civil engineering firm in Dedham, Mass. Primarily, we work with athletic and recreation design projects similar to these, so very familiar. And even just in the general area, we worked with the town of Harvard, Air Shirley over the last few years. So very comfortable and knowledgeable about your type of communities and what you're looking for. So I'm going to start with the existing conditions, just to give everyone a little sense on, I assume most of the people in the room have a general sense of the site, but we'll talk a little bit about some of the constraints. And then we've developed generally 2 design options to consider. We thought about phasing a lot, understanding that we can't just blow up this site and do construction in 1 year. So trying to figure out some of the best ways to organize the site as best as possible for future use, as well as phasing, understanding, we touch the track now, track's offline for a certain portion, where does it go in the future and things like that. One of the main program elements we were looking at was to expand to have 4 softball fields. So one of our first tasks was to figure out how we reorganize this site to maximize the available space on the site with the constraints related to wetlands and site grades. Parking was also another thing we looked at, really figuring out, when we reorganize these facilities, understanding the amount of use this is going to get, especially on weekends, a lot of car traffic coming in. So understanding, with the middle school, there's obviously usable space on the weekends, but then understanding between game events. That's sort of our biggest time where you're ending a game, people are coming early for the next game, trying to maximize the parking and make it as efficient and safe as possible. I'll do my best with this aerial and any of the images tonight. By all means, feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions. I don't want this to be really a lecture as much as informational and answer questions as we're going, or we certainly can wait until the very end. So we have the existing site. We have the existing elementary middle school to page right. Down here is the Muddy Pond Athletic Complex, and then the Griffin Road Athletic Complex just behind the middle school. To reference yourself, we have the existing track and field here, a slope of about 10 feet of grade change down to the existing ball fields where there's 2 softball fields, 1 baseball field, and there's some informal parking just between the athletic fields and the community park. Some informal parking down here, and there also are some challenges as it relates to informal parking down on Muddy Pond. We do have some wetlands in this general area, both on-site and off-site, so we want to respect some of those, understanding that there are regulatory constraints as it relates to buffers and what we can and can't do inside those buffers, so want to be flexible and just not try and maximize every piece of space as best as possible. We also know there's a large hillside over here for septic related to both the schools, so for the most part, this area has been untouched, mainly due to getting accessible routes to the area would be very difficult. In addition to looking at all these elements, one of the most important things was getting handicapped accessible routes everywhere. Understand we do have decent grade change from the lower fields up to the track elevation, different elevations that are here. So we do want to make sure, once someone arrives to the site, you're able to park and get efficiently everywhere as best as possible. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Olivia to start talking about the Muddy Pond complex and then the design options.
Sure. So one of the things that we heard about the Muddy Pond complex is that there's an existing softball field that's there right now. The program for this site was we wanted to move that softball program over to the rest of the site to be with the other softball fields that are there. So our program going into this project, looking at the Muddy Pond site, was to look at how we could maximize that site for flexible multi-use rectangular fields, like for soccer, potential lacrosse. So we wanted to, without going too much into the existing grades, because there is all these areas in here that we sort of left not green, we've left blank, are very steep slopes that are used for sledding in the winter, hiking in the summers. We didn't want to get too much into earthwork on this site for the field uses. Talk a little bit about how earthwork relates to our parking program in a second. But for the fields, we wanted to maximize that space that's there, take away that softball use that's not being it's not really the maximal use for softball in that area. Move that over to the rest of this softball program on the Griffin Road site and see how many flexible soccer fields we can fit on this site. Particularly at the younger youth levels where you can fit a lot more fields onto that field space. In this program, we're showing, I think 10, but U6, potentially U8 soccer fields over there on that site. We also wanted to look at how we could expand parking and really formalize that with paved parking, permanent line striping for parking. Parking right now is in this very top corner of the site, and it's not formal. It's a stone dust or sand, gravel parking area just straight off the road. We've had a lot of people park on the street, and that getting around parked cars around that corner is a bit of a challenge. Getting people around that corner can be a bit of a safety concern when there are cars coming in between games, in between the sites. So we wanted to formalize parking along that street and formalize some pedestrian access around that corner. To do that, we have looked into potentially taking the grades down at the slope that's there right now. I have a section up at the top of the page, starting over here, off Griffin Road. This is the left side of the section, the right side of the section is on Muddy Pond Road over here. The existing slope of the hill that comes in like that is this thin line at the top of the section. We would have to knock that down significantly. And so that would be a greater conversation about what happens to that material around the town. Can that be used on the site or potentially elsewhere in town for other projects? That's something that would need to be explored a lot further, but in doing that, we could add a significant number of additional parking spaces for both this site and for Griffin Road, to the tune of about 184 spaces across just this parcel. On that side of the road. So significant earthwork challenges. A lot of additional study would be required to figure out how to use that material, but that would really increase your parking capacity for both the sites, and it would create a situation where moving around the site for pedestrians would be a bit safer in the future.
And then one note before we talk about the proposed options. For athletic fields in New England, usually there are certain orientations we try to achieve from a solar standpoint. So track and field, rectangular fields such as football, soccer, lacrosse, want to be in a north-south orientation based on solar orientation. Baseball and softball, similar to that, from home plate through the pitching rubber, you want to be in a north-northeast orientation. So as we started looking at these options, that's the first thing we do is see, from a solar standpoint, especially if you've ever coached or been at athletic events, we want to make sure from a safety perspective, the kids aren't looking in the sun. With that on the site, it does get difficult because again, some of the constraints, there are some obstacles where some of these fields do get oriented in different locations. So essentially that's where we started. We also looked at from the soccer program, obviously with painted fields, they're year to year, depending on the number of kids you have in the different groups, the types of fields change a little bit. So you might have a heavier group with the 11 versus 11 age group, and the younger kids may be, fluctuating here and there. So when we did look at all these options from a soccer standpoint, we made sure we were generally achieving the same amount of space that you currently had over the last several years. So we were able to look at aerial mapping over the last few years to just get a general sense on how you paint the fields. Again, primarily sort of the lower field is where you had a lot of your soccer program, then ultimately, within the track and field where that was more of a game field.
Yes.
Give a little bit of context here.
Do you want to go to phasing?
Do you want phasing or do you want to do the full ones first?
Oh, we can do the full ones.
Whichever one you want.
Let's talk to this. We'll do the picture.
Sure.
Yes. So ultimately, we came up with, for the Griffin Road portion of the site, two main options. We went through with our project team, from town representatives, went through, I want to say we had 10 or 11 options at one point.
Seven initially.
Seven initially, and then we kept adding them and taking them away. But we did a lot of iteration on this site and eventually settled down at these two that we really liked. One sort of mirrors what's on the Griffin Road parcel now. This one, I think we decided that we liked for its ability to be phased. We could develop different portions of the site at different timelines without sort of blowing up the whole thing and taking the site offline for a long time. And option two is more of a reorganization. I think fundamentally this was led by the idea that you could relocate the track somewhere else on the site. So this option one is based on renovating the track in kind in the location that it's at now. Moving all of your softball program into the same area, we think that would really help out in terms of tournament management, sharing resources, sharing coaches with the other fields on that site. We would be relocating baseball, reorienting it to where the kickball backstop is right now, and then locating some other flexible multi-sport fields around the site as well. Some youth soccer in the area where there is an existing softball field in this corner now. It does encroach on a bit of the wetland buffer area. So we'd move that over to more of the lower Griffin field area. And then use that site as flexible grass space with some opportunity to have soccer, other fall sports played in the shared outfields of all of these softball fields over here. We would also be looking at reorganizing parking in both these options to sort of bring a more central parking option that can be accessed from multiple fields as opposed to just having it paged north where it can mostly be accessed from the lower Griffin site right now. This would bring it more centrally so that you could have more of that accessible access to the different fields around the site. In both options, we also looked at what we could do with we're calling it the horse pit area, which you currently use for practice football. We were trying to see if we could fit a full-sized, flexible multi-sport field down there as well, but because we're in potential wetlands, because of some of the slopes around the site between the track and the horse pit, it constrains what the dimensions that we can get on that site. We were able to grade a little bit more into this slope area towards the track and then towards the septic leaching fields in order to get a full formal or a half formal football field for practice in that area, and then give you some additional, some of that flexible space that you have right now can remain. Option 2 is our more of an overhaul of the existing site based on taking this track from where it is here, rotating it slightly to get to a little bit more optimal orientation for rectangular field sports, more of a north-south orientation, and then moving it closer to the middle school. We think that that would help you out in terms of game day traffic management, especially, where it would be easier to access the parking at the middle school in order to access the fields, and then also other services at the building, storage at the building, things like that. This would also be the option that gives you the largest central parking area, and you could also use this parking area coming off that parking area for storage, concessions, taking that support building that's currently at the top of the hill and renovating that building or replacing that building with a updated concessions and ticketing building that's down closer to the field and closer to that larger central parking area that serves all of your fields. We have your softball fields in this option are spread out a little bit more. We really renovate this one, Page South, in kind. The kickball field here gets flipped around in orientation and moved up closer to the school. We think that could be useful in terms of recess, PE, things like that for the school uses, with a flexible field space in the outfield. Where the track is right now, we would relocate the baseball field that's there, put another softball field in the shared outfield space with a flexible field in that shared outfield, and then with the space that's left between Griffin Road and the rotated, relocated track, have another softball field and another flexible field space. This option allows you to have multiple of these larger flexible fields sort of going at the same time in terms of recreational sports as well. So that's an additional programmatic element that you can get with option 2. Option 2, in terms of phasing, does represent sort of a real reimagination of the site. So there might be some additional challenges. There will be some additional challenges in terms of how you break that up for different projects, construct it in different phases over the years. But we think that this option, if what you're looking for is slightly better orientations for the track and field, and then more opportunities to use a lot of these different spaces that are created in different ways, option 2 is a good look at those flexibilities.
Yeah, I'll walk through the phasing for a moment. So I think, really the big challenges between option 1 and 2, aside from the cost, which we'll discuss after the phasing, option 1, really we looked at how we phase this appropriately. Option 2, there's a lot of nice things specifically about the parking. I think we gained about 50 parking spaces from option 1 to option 2. It's all very centrally located, and the track and field is in a great orientation. But what you'll see when we go through a few of these plans with the phasing, that's where the difficulty really comes, especially understanding that the middle school track program is very important for the community. So, depending on what order option 2 gets developed, how long is that track and field offline, or is there an ability to get the track and field done first, and what's that do for the other spaces, I think baseball, that's located in that general location. So the next few boards here, so this is a full view of option 1, and this is showing a little bit of the phasing. So if we look at potentially, and there's some flexibility in moving some of these phases around, especially in option 1. So option 1, if we were to say, okay, this lower field space, let's convert this to 4 natural grass softball fields and add the parking here. The nice thing with this is that the track and field maintains as it is. The kickball field, the softball field, that all gets maintained as it is. The challenge is baseball is the one field that sort of gets either relocated or offline for whatever that duration is. Could be about a year or so. When we look at all these individual constructions, they're probably 9 to 12 months plus or minus. So something like this, if we got these online, baseball may be, elsewhere or offline for about a year or two. Rotate this to phase 2. So once these softball fields and parking get built, we would build the baseball field and do some of the small renovations in through here for those smaller soccer fields. And again, this may be fairly minor. This is all existing grass space now, so it may be just a little bit of maintenance versus full construction, but tying this all together along with the horse pit to get this all as one sort of phase. And then potentially as your final phase, while you're doing these projects, you're still using the existing track, but then in a final phase, you could do the track renovation at that point. Or we could actually flip-flop, right? Where you could say, okay, maybe the track and field is more important than the other renovations. Do the track as that first phase, and then maybe it's a softball, and then ultimately you probably, finish up with the baseball. So either the softball or track and field in this option makes sense as you maybe phase 1 or phase 3, depending on how that shakes out. And then the challenge really with option 2 is how do we phase the first option? So year 1.
The backside.
There we go. That's what happens when you have too many boards. So in discussion, we looked at this and said, okay, what might make sense, so we have the existing softball fields, baseball field. If we built this at least third softball field and built the baseball field as a first phase, you lose the track immediately. That's really the big challenge with this one. Because if we look to try and do the track by itself right there, you're losing baseball. So there's a little bit of play that we'd have to figure out there. As part of these discussions we've had, we did look at, all right, baseball and softball are phase 1. Now we put the track and field in this location as a phase number 2. And then we're able to start, building out the rest of the facility. So you get the parking in here, get your last softball field with the soccer field in the outfield, and then this is the last slide here.
Yeah, it's just trying to figure out if sort of these are a package deal, the baseball, softball, and the track, or if this gets done and then this sort of gets done separately. There's different cost considerations for both of those options, so we wanted to explore them separately.
Yep. Then eventually you have the final phase back here, which again, once you get all these elements complete with all the additional parking, we're sort of finishing up getting 2 additional softball fields. So again, I think, in both these options, we're achieving the 4 softball fields, baseball field, track and field facility, and then some of the smaller soccer fields. I think we'll look real quickly just to talk a little bit about cost. So we looked at this in 2 ways. One, obviously if you built this whole facility as one construction project, what's that cost? And then we broke out all the individual phases. So for option 1 on the left, we're just about $8.6 million all in. And option number 2, we're just over $10 million all in. Now, obviously those do break out when we look at the individual phases. I won't go through every single one unless someone would like to hear this, but I'll look at just options. Here's what you think. So when we start breaking down these numbers a little bit, if we decide, okay, we're just going to go with phase 1 of option 1, that's close to about $2.7 million. With all these options, we've developed all these numbers based on itemized estimates. The working group has seen all the backup. We haven't just thrown large numbers that are, okay, we think a field is $2 million and a track is $3 million. All the design work you see that's done over the aerial, we've taken true unit costs, look at unit costs from contractors we're typically working with to understand what those numbers are. At this level, we're only designing on an aerial Google image, so we have 20% contingency in all of these numbers because we haven't done any engineering, surveying, geotechnical work. So at this stage, it's very important to have that buffer as a contingency so that, depending on what happens in the marketplace, or once we start designing these facilities, learning more about the sites, that's when you start incurring some of those costs. Thinking long-term as well with all these these phases, we have added about 4% for escalation for each year out. So let's say, 2 years down the road, the community says we're ready to do this project. Today's dollars is about 2.7, but if we're going to do this in 2027, we assume it's going to be about 3 million. Because we want, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we assume there's some sort of escalation, which is hopefully less than what we've seen the last few years, but certainly want plans so we have a bigger budget number than not. We always sort of talk to our clients, say, I'd rather go back to the town and say, hey, we didn't have to use all the money, than, hey, we need to now ask for more money after we've already asked for a good amount of money. So we always look at these numbers from a budgetary standpoint, hoping that once we put them out to bid, these numbers will come in less. How much? You never really can tell. Depends on when you're bidding, depends on the climate of, the contractors that are actually bidding on the project, if they have projects near this site and there's some efficiencies and things like that. So we sort of look at it globally and say, these are budget numbers we're seeing. When the bids happen, there's some efficiencies that we can't account for from a budgetary standpoint, but this is the best case, opinion of cost that we see for the community. So that generally wraps up. So I can certainly go through any numbers on the phases, or we can certainly open up to the board or any other questions anyone has. Certainly here for as long as we want to talk.
How many fields are we increasing, if any? How many more soccer fields, how many more softball, baseball fields versus what we have today versus what we have?
For certainly increasing by one softball field. I'm not sure, Olivia, do you? For the soccer fields?
For the soccer fields, I think that the ability to sort of use more of the fields side by side, I think that based on the way that you line the fields now, I think the number of fields you have on the site changes year by year, season by season. But what we're doing is creating a space that we know can accommodate more of these fields side by side. Even in option 1 where they're sort of together versus in option 2 where they can be used more disparately across the site. So it's not really like a one-to-one comparison, looking at this option versus what you have right now, but it's just the knowledge, the understanding that this is the field size that you can get on this site year after year. You can use it the same way.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, the lower existing softball fields, I think usually you have 2 fields down there. Maybe in a pinch, maybe it's 2 smaller fields, maybe you get to 3. Obviously, we have the game field in the middle, and then these are sometimes the smaller fields. When we look, I think, at both of those options, sorry, I'll just peek through. So we have 2 soccer fields right here, so we're matching the existing condition for the most part because we have the game field. And then over here, we have 1, 2, 3 soccer fields of decent size, and then the game field. So actually, in option 2, we may be gaining a 6 versus 6 or 7 versus 7 field there. Sure.
Can I just add that currently, right now, the fields behind Houghton School are not being used as any sort of soccer or multi-purpose just because of the condition that they're in. It's unsafe for the children to play on. So if you want to look at it in that regards, both those options do give us a little bit more field space because we have green land that we're able to use after the renovation that we can't use currently.
So do we need more fields? Are we not able to schedule games because of lack of fields?
From what I can gather from the information just by how people are scheduling things every day of the week for the whole block of time. Are they actually there for 4 hours every day? I can't tell you for certain without camping out on the field, but they are taking every bit of field that I have.
And is the main purpose to improve the state of the fields or to gain more fields?
I don't think you can actually gain more fields in the same amount of acreage. You can get better use of that area in that same amount of acreage, plus increasing the quality of the fields as they are now. Yes, it's both those.
Sherry, did you just want to introduce yourself for those who are watching who may not?
Sherry Gonzorczyk, Recreation Director.
All right, thank you. Then,
in addition to gaining fields or improving fields, are we also improving buildings or facilities in some way? I know increasing parking is one thing.
Yep. Yeah, so option one, we maintain the existing buildings, I believe. So if you want to just point out, so there's the two existing buildings in that location. In option two, we'd be looking to add a new building that's centrally located between the track and field and the parking lot. So when you do look at those costs, some of the increased costs in option two is actually a brand new building. There's a line item in the budget for that. And that's assumed to be, storage, restrooms. By no means is it a concessions building, because unfortunately in the state of Massachusetts, when you design buildings like this, you're designing a commercial size concessions building with all the bells and whistles for, a community building you may use 3 times a year. So, really that's going to be, for dry storage, for restrooms, and sort of to support, a small improvement on what you have existing. But in option one, we're able to sort of maintain those locations, mostly because we left the track and field and it's the current location.
Is there any thought or consideration in either at the time of construction or in the future for lighting any of these fields?
Yes. So our cost opinions for the track include a full new set of probably Musco lighting. Just for the track in both options, we haven't considered that for the other fields within this cost opinion, but that certainly could be something that's included now or in the future.
Yeah, because the track and field currently does have lighting. Obviously, it's quite old lighting, so putting the money into this facility. Air Shirley, if you've been to that facility, that has LED lighting, so that's at least the level of lighting that we would be looking as it relates to pricing.
Out of curiosity, which fields today are an integral part of the school usage versus the rec program? Other than the track.
Currently, right now, the school has a boys soccer team, and they actually did receive a coach this year for the girls soccer team. So they are using the soccer fields this year for both of those teams in the fall. They also have a cross-country team that they use the whole property for their cross-country. In the spring, they will have a girls softball team, which they utilize the softball field right at the bottom of the snack shack where it currently is. And the boys have their baseball team that they use, what we refer to as the Babe Ruth field at the bottom of their hill. And they have the track and field program that happens in the spring where they utilize all of the track and the inside of the track.
And where is their soccer field today?
The soccer field used to be back-to-back, where the boys and the girls teams would play back-to-back in Lower Griffin. Since COVID, and may have something to do with Triple E a few years ago, they switched to both teams playing simultaneously. The girls play in the middle of the track and the boys play on Lower Griffin. So they're no longer finishing at 4:30, 5 o'clock at night, 5:30, because they're both starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I was just going to ask the DPW and Recreation if you had a preference to option 1 or 2. Did any of you discuss that?
We did. So you want to hear my reasonings? So as a budget standpoint and an easiness of phasing, I like option 1. Because it seems to be the most budget effective and we can get things accomplished with what we need to do with what we have. As far as more usage, I like option 2, even though it costs a lot more money. So we have this year taken our lovely kickball field and turned it into what we call softball 4. So we currently have 2 softball teams behind the school system, which has now given softball, girls softball in town, an opportunity to run a fall ball program, which they've never been able to run before because soccer uses Lower Griffin. So just having that away, separated from the rest of the complex, it has enabled more kids to play outside rather than going home and watching video games. I like the option of moving the track closer to the school just for parking purposes. If anyone goes up there on Sunday for football, it's a mess. If anyone goes up there during the track and field events that the school has. We've got 5 schools that come in to use our track. So that's a lot of parents coming in 5 school buses. I like the idea in option 2 that your baseball and your softball for the girls' teams are all in one area. So if a parent has an 8th grader and a 6th grader, they're not trying to run back and forth between all these fields. If they have a softball and a baseball, they can see them all in one place. So they're kind of selfish reasons as far as just availability for everybody, but that's why I like them better.
Where's the Houghton School playground that we rebuilt?
Yeah, so the playgrounds and these basketball courts, storage buildings up here, untouched in both options.
No, I know, it's just that sometimes parents like to have a playground near to where their older kids are playing soccer or whatever.
They can walk. How about the DPW? Were you leaning anywhere?
I was looking more at the parking more than anything else. I like the parking in option 2. However, I'm kind of in Sherry's camp where option 2, while it looks like a dream scenario, it's just a little bit maybe more complicated than it would need to be, especially in terms of phasing. I definitely, moving the track has a lot of benefit, but there's a lot of challenges behind it. We're keeping it the same. It's already graded for the track. It's a similar size, and that helps quite a bit. And even some of those softball fields are pretty much in the same spot where some of them are now, so they could get tweaked, but it wouldn't be a huge change. I know that it might sound boring, but I was probably most excited about the parking lots. And having the ability, like the flow, because right now it's difficult. It's tight, it's dirt, and people don't, once the first person's set, that's it. Everyone kind of follows in behind. If the first person didn't park well, then the next person doesn't, and next thing you know, Muddy Pond Road's covered in traffic. It's same with Griffin, so.
So, myself being a softball lassie, I like option 1, obviously, because they're all together. And we do gain the parking spots across the road, which will be in walking distance because of the way the hill will be graded. However, for the town's benefit, I'm going to have to side with Sherry and Ryan a little bit on option 2. It's going to definitely be a challenge, a lot more challenging to construct. But when you take into consideration on a weekend, the use of the backside of Choxet for the parking and the availability, I'm torn between both. For the town's benefit, I think it's obviously more money. But long term, I think option 2, I like. More, somewhat more than one.
With the construction, what would you do, Sherry, with the shutdown?
That is a good question.
And you know that.
Right, so right now, having 4 softball fields on the property, I'm hoping that we'll be able to keep softball on the property, but just not using the field that they're used to. That was my first thought. With baseball, we do have other baseball fields in town. I'm not sure if they're the right measurements, because Andy, you would have to help me out with that. But for 1 season, maybe 2 seasons, can we bus them over to West Sterling to use that baseball field?
It would be difficult, but it could be made to work. With
You could just have no.
knowing that it's only 1 season and knowing the final outcome. It would take a little work on our part, but it could be made. It's not going to be ideal, but it could be made to work.
Right. As far as track and field goes, I know last year we hosted more track and field programs at our school because another school didn't have a track. So there may be some flexibility with the school program in that regard. I think the biggest concern that we're going to have is with the residents. If you go out to that track on any given day, whether it's the winter or the spring or the summer, there are people on that all day long. That is a heavily used piece of property. And that's going to be probably our biggest hurdle, is where do we send those people that go to the track for their safe walk every day?
My only thought to that is if it's publicized, well, obviously it is, if they know the outcome, hopefully they'll have leniency.
Yeah, I'd just like to be able to give them an option as, this is going to be shut down, but this is always an option for you to do. So that's, yeah, Clinton does have a really nice track that they put up over by the school.
Question on option one, are the 2 green fields in the lower right, are those the fields that Sherry was relating are unusable today?
Part of those are unusable. We have a softball field in one section in the far corner of Houghton, and then we have where there's a baseball field on that board. You'll see we currently are having a softball field. The green space in the middle is pretty much deemed, I don't want to call it unusable, but it is not favorable for having the kids run around. There's a lot of unevenness, twist of ankles.
So is the ball field next to those 2 in the lower right, is that the existing ball field renovated? If you move up just that one right there.
That is the current kickball field that we have made into a softball field this year.
Have you priced out just renovating those 2 fields in the lower right that Sherry has indicated are unusable today to make them usable? Is that one of the costed options or not?
I think that's probably one of the phases, but I'm not sure we looked at those 2 specifically by themselves. I think that was part of, is this one right here? Yeah, so I think when we looked at some of the pricing, the phasing, I think, renovating these fields down here, this baseball field and the horse pit, those all were sort of included in one phase. And that's right around just under $1 million for those renovations. So you figure if it was just this, it would be some fraction of that $1 million.
I'm the finance guy, that's why I gotta ask.
If I said half, you'd remember that. If I was wrong, I don't want to commit to that. So it's less than $1 million.
Sounds like a plan.
Absolutely.
Hi, Jeff. Sherry, has the school been involved in this at all?
No.
Any representatives from the school?
No, we did not bring it to them. We have not showed it to them at this point.
Have you mentioned it to them, Bill?
I know I had mentioned it to Tony, but he was obviously retiring, and now it's an all-new.
Oh, so they'll never even know.
You were all looped in.
I can't believe you didn't pass those notes along.
My only thought would be on option 2, which I think we all kind of liked the best, but when you mentioned, Sherry, how heavily used the track is all throughout the day, they may not want it so close to the school if there's going to be a lot of usage.
That's a good point that I did not even think of.
They don't like people roaming around school properties.
Again, new administration, they don't know.
Right.
It's always been this way.
You don't want to spend the money and then have them be upset.
Well, at some point, I'm sure the school.
So that's a very good point, but that brings up a question in my mind. That property on option 2, the track sits on that rendition. Who controls it, who owns it? The school or the town?
The town owns the school property.
I mean, we own the whole thing in theory, but we don't own the rights. So does that property where the track is that town-owned or school-controlled property?
I have to go back and look at the lease agreement, what they actually have official access to.
And the reason I bring that up is because of her question. During school hours, when I was maintaining the softball fields, I could not touch the current Houghton field. But I could still work down on field 1 and 2. So and I'm just saying, how does that fall in? Granted, during school hours, there'd be no track parking behind Chocolate, but you have that new parking lot. I don't think people would want to park behind Chocolate, they'd want to park right there. I'm just, my observation.
I believe the town controls everything outside the sidewalks. My guess is with that, that's right where they do their recess, is right at that home field.
So that's
So
gonna
that
be a
probably
gray
is why
area.
they didn't want you anywhere near that
Well,
field
I mean,
during the
Holton
school
I
day.
understood.
Yeah.
I couldn't work on that field till after hours.
Right.
But that is very close, so that's a very good question.
All right. Anybody else? Yes.
Has any irrigation been planned for these fields? Are we gonna go with natural grass?
So natural grass for all the renovations, and then we decide to not have irrigation, so these will be all seeded fields. But for the most part, as part of the construction, we're regrading the athletic fields, making sure they have the right pitches, the right crowns and things like that. That's actually a good point to discuss, because when we do start talking about the phasing and the scheduling is from a seeding perspective. Athletic fields, you want them to be seeded and sit for 2 growing seasons. So, often like this time of year right now, this is the best time to seed. You want so we're going to seed right now, it's offline for the fall, offline for the spring, and you're on the following summer. So when we do talk about, where the track, that's going to be offline for a certain portion. The grass fields, in order for them to properly establish, we want to make sure there's enough time for them to grow in, which is something you'd have to factor in. Obviously, if we irrigate with sod, additional costs, additional maintenance for irrigation, you get on the field a little bit sooner. But as we've gone through the study, it was sort of decided through the working group that no irrigation and seed made the most sense.
Where the track is right now and the field in the middle, is that field in bad repair? Does it need total reseeding and total changing?
It could use a regrade. Yeah, so some of the grading through the field is, a little irregular. From a safety perspective, I think if it's in that configuration, it's sort of a simpler construction. So you strip the loam and seed, call it 6-8 inches, screen it, re-spread it, and seed it. So it's a fairly simple construction, even though there's time involved. The track itself, you would pulverize the asphalt in place, reuse that as base material, and then bring new asphalt on top to pave on top of that. And then we've also included a rubberized surface, which is what you would run on in the D areas, which are right behind the end lines and on the track itself.
I think that whole thing's getting a little bit different size too, right?
Yep.
We're not quite regulation track the way we were set up, and that kind of expands.
Correct.
It brings it to a regulation field and track.
Yeah, because right now it's a fairly narrow field. Football fits, but it's tough to get some of the other sports, especially soccer. Soccer at the upper level wants to be a wider field than longer, so we've gained a little bit of space there. But again, our constraints are really, this hillside and this back hill, so we've been able to expand it a little bit, but again, there's a lot of constraints on here, so we're gaining some feet, which is great, but I think that's the benefit in option 2. We actually gain more width in that option as well. So there's a lot of nuances between two of the options where we gain a little bit here and there, but I think ultimately the phasing is really is the big key, which is sort of why we're drawn to option 1, where option 2 had a lot of benefit, just understanding the reality of how you get this built appropriately when school's in session, when you're trying to use the facilities you're not touching at that time.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Exciting project if we can get it done.
All right, next up, we have Sherry for a recreation update.
You can all stay.
Hi, Sherry Gonzarek, Recreation Director. Obviously, we have just finished up our summer season. It was a crazy busy season. We start every summer off with our Super Safari, which is 1 week of all-day field trips where we go off about an hour and a half away from Centertown, Sterling, spend the day with the kids. We've gone to Mel's Funway, Roger Williams Zoo, which I have been told was not everyone's favorite, Altitudes with the barbecue back at the beach, Canopy Lake, and Water Whiz. We actually had to cap that program because it was full with 45 kids. So between the amount of counselors that I had and being able to comfortably ride in the bus for an hour and a half, 45 was our limit because we were also adding 10 to 12 counselors on the bus at the same time. So that was the spot we have never been in before with this program. So that was really wonderful to see. We went on with our summer lake. Obviously, you know, our half-day summer lake, we do our traditional camp with relays and crafts. We do swim lessons. This year, the Red Cross changed things up on us a little bit with the swim lessons, where we actually had to keep track of how many kids participated and how many we actually passed and how many we failed and how many we actually didn't get to test because they missed the last day or whatever. In order to go through a swim lesson test with the Red Cross to advance to the next level, you have to be in our camp for 2 weeks straight and attend swim lessons every day because there is an hour that you need to meet in order to go through the entire curriculum. So for a 2-week session over the entire summer, so that was 3 sessions, we tested 104 kids, 51 of them passed, but 24 did not get tested. So we were hoping that maybe we would have maybe a 3/4 pass rate, but because those 24 kids weren't there on the last day, we weren't able to see what exactly our number was going to be. The half-day program ends, children go home. I get a majority of kids that stay in the afternoon. They have lunch with us. Then they go off to venues in the afternoon. We do disc golf here in town with the trip to Rhoda's. We do Harvard Lanes, Mulligan's Golf, Ultimate Obstacles, Ward Hill Tuba Sliding, the Ecotarium, Schoolyard, and a new vendor that I brought in this year is Knuckle Bones, where we actually had a bunch of instructors come out from Boston and play field games with the kids up on Griffin Road. So we gave them unlimited water, unlimited freeze pops in the freezer at the snack shack, and they had a great afternoon. So those programs, there were some weeks that we had 45 kids in the afternoon, which again is high numbers for what we've had in the last few years. I think last year a lot of our afternoons were like 20, 25. West Boylston has discovered our program. They all get together and decide which 2 weeks or which week they're all coming, so that's where we get our big jump in numbers. And there are a lot of West Boylston kids. They had a great time. We also have our counselor and training program that was capped out at 10 counselor and trainings every session. So I had 30 kids go through the program. None of them repeated because there's one of the prerequisites that if it fills up, you can't do that program more than once. So what this does is in 2 years' time, when these kids reach the age of 16, they now become who I pick from to hire for counselors. They've been able to work for us for the summer and see if they like it. We're actually able to see how they do to see if they're any good. So it works both ways for everybody. It's a very successful program. So we had our polywogs went for 3 sessions. I don't know what the numbers are in kindergarten. That polywog program is only for kids going into kindergarten, but our numbers were very low this year. I could have taken extra kids in the last 2 sessions, and I did allow kids to repeat, which is, again, something we normally don't do because it's very limited. We only take 15 kids each session. So I could have taken more polywogs, but they just weren't there. We did 2 volleyball programs. One actually utilizes the beach with our volleyball court down there, and then we do one inside. We had our 2 basketball programs, 2 children tennis programs. We did offer 3, but one of them did not fill up. We had our 2-week theater program that took place at the 1835. They actually choose to be at the 1835 over being at the school with the premier lighting and the premier sound and having a backstage. They like going back to basics and using our stage here, having to vocalize a little bit more instead of having a microphone. Our Music Together program for our infants to our kindergartners took place for a session over at the 1835. We had adult tennis, morning yoga on the beach, and we continued with our total body workouts. What wasn't new this year was our Snapology Lego engineering program. We did offer 2 programs last year, and they were canceled due to low enrollment. This year, they both ran. They were both full. One of them was a stop motion animation, and we actually went upstairs with the 1835 afterwards, and we did a movie premiere. So all the parents came in to see the stop motion movies that the kids had made, and these were all kids 1st to 4th grade. So it was pretty interesting to see what they were able to do. And then we did a Brick City and programmable robots program over there, and they also also did a premiere day for mom and dads to come in and see the entire city that they have built out of Legos. And they would be given assignment for the day, like, what type of animal would you want in this city? And the kids would all have to go and create their own animal to like put into the city, and everybody had to work together and incorporate it. It was really cute. New this year, we started a pickleball program. For the last few years, we've been doing an integrational program with the senior center. Last year, we had 16 participants, so I approached the phys ed teacher at the middle school to do a program at the school for pickleball. He said sure, and we ended up with 12 kids, which was pretty good for a 4-day program for its first year out. And this was also the first year that we went to the Woo Sox and did the town takeover. And we had people right in this building that participated in the opening ceremonies and the 7th inning sing. We did try to do a bike rodeo this year. Unfortunately, because of instructor restraints with the state, we ended up having to cancel it. I have reached out to fire and the police to see if we can't get something else going again this year. And I'll reach out to the state to see if they want to do the instruction if Sterling PD doesn't feel that we can do it ourselves. And we want to gear that more around like a safety day for the town, getting away from the Tetra trucks, because I don't want to take away from anybody else's thing, but we want to try and get people together. Our concert, we had 5 postponements this year and only 4 of them rescheduled. Most of them went on the steps of the 1835 and during the Sterling Street Market, and they're telling me that they like playing there better. I don't know why the trucks are going by in front of them in the middle of a song, but they still like doing it. Our fall brochure is almost ready for release. It'll be released on Monday with registration opening up on Thursday. We've got a lot of our usual favorites, and then some of the new programs that I brought in for this year is dodgeball for our middle schoolers, because that's all they want to play when they're at camp, so why not capitalize on that. I had Little Sparks Theater approach me, and they want to do a stage makeup for Cuts and Bruises in time for Halloween. We started Pilates for adults, and we brought in T-ball for the pre-K. We're bringing back our light tour, our egg hunt, and our road race in the spring. As you know, we also did a lot of improvements to our beach this year with the help of Bill and the DPW and Dick Mackey. We were able to make a lot of the improvements for the ADA compliant bathrooms, the mat, the drainage. We off into a rain garden, grading out the parking lot. We put new siding on the sheds, and they are supposed to be painted shortly. So everybody commented on the improvements on the beach, just like how amazing that it looks down there now. The additional police patrols were amazing down there, helping out with just keeping just an eye on the sticker situation alone was just great. The raft received new chains and swim buoys and a whole new buoy system designed and installed by Sterling Fire. So now the ropes, they don't go off kilter with the rise and raise of the water or with the when the breezes kick up, they stay square. We've received a lot of complaints about the swim area being off kilter, and for the lower end where the small children swim, not giving them enough space because they had shifted in the winter whatnot. The raft ladder was refabricated with welded steps, so it's a little bit more durable than anything that we could have purchased. We did purchase a few things, and the DPW made me return it because it wasn't sturdy enough for what we needed it to do. Currently working with Connor Sign on a new sign for the front of Shoalden Park with all the pertinent information as far as when the park is open and closed and what you can do there. We coordinated with the DPW, and we cut in and leveled and resurfaced the softball field directly behind the schools that we call the kickball field. And we also redid the softball field down in the far corner of the Houghton field. And this made it possible for softball to be removed from Muddy Pond, so now it is a complete multi-purpose field. And it also enabled softball to run a fall ball program this year, which they haven't been able to do. We added 2 new basketball rims behind the school and 6 nets throughout the town. Jeff went around and put those all up for me. And with the tennis courts, I'm currently working on a sign with Connor Sign. We had a lot of situations this year with, there's a new app out there called Play Scheduler, where people are able to, it was designed for people to go up and say, the group of us are going to play pickleball at this particular court. Come join us. But no way was it supposed to reserve the court. That is being misunderstood, and a lot of people are coming to our courts and asking people to leave, refusing to leave because they thought they had it reserved. I've received quite a few phone calls of people quite upset that they haven't been able to get there because people think that they reserved them, and they call me to reserve, and that's just not something we do. It's a first come, first serve, and be cognizant of how long you've been there if someone is waiting. So we're putting in some new signage to help hopefully alleviate that. And the 1835 hall is so busy. Like every week, there's probably 5 or 6 programs going on. As I said earlier, I did my Snapology programs there. The center stage was there. We did babysitting and CPR classes there. Currently, I've got 3 recreation programs going on in there with 1 music group. We have 4 Girl Scout troops using it. Multi-town committees are using it. 2 homeschool groups are using it for 2 days out of the week to get together with their co-ops to do different science projects or whatnot. We were able to work with the Sterling Cultural Council, so any of their grantors that they give money to, whether they're Sterling residents or not, we've worked out a rate for them, so they're able to have some of their stuff over there. So currently the dancing is going on for the next 6 weeks, and I believe there's a gentleman with some drums coming in next week or in 2 weeks. The Coin Club is back. The Dancing Witches, we've all seen them at the Halloween. They're using that building for rehearsals now. So it's really getting a lot of use. And my last thing is my Eagle Scout project. Back in 2008, an Eagle Scout had put in the fitness trail for us over on Griffin Road, and I have an Eagle Scout this year that wants to bring it back to life. It was a little difficult because it's been so long and the signs are all faded, but with the help of one of the teachers from the school, we were actually able to track down the original Eagle Scout, and he is actually helping today's Eagle Scout get it all back to the way it was in 2008. So that's really kind of cool. And that's all that recreation has been doing.
That's all?
That's all.
It's great, thank you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm surprised Joe's not asking this question, but for all these activities that you have that are outside of recreation, like the homeschoolers and dance, are they all paying to use the 1835?
Yes. The Girl Scouts do not pay. The town committees don't pay. The homeschoolers are paying. They're all Sterling residents, so they get that Sterling resident rate that we had all agreed on. So something is coming in. As of this past week, for the past year, I believe I'm up to about $1,250 that I brought in rent in the 1835. It's not a lot, but when something needs to be done, I've got $1,250 to contribute to that.
Why aren't the Girl Scouts paying? You getting free cookies?
No, I'm not getting, I can't even eat their cookies. It was just part of the original agreement that we weren't going to ask the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts to pay. So we give them a place to meet.
We used to meet at my mother's house. That's
You're not allowed to do that anymore.
That's stupid.
You're not allowed to meet in people's houses, and obviously if you're a Girl Scout leader, you've got, your child is in your group and you can't drive them in your own car anymore.
What?
Yeah, you can't drive with them and other children in your car without another adult.
Any other questions for Sherry?
No, I just have a few comments I'd like to make. Great job, as usual. Great fun at the Woo Sox, especially with the 7th inning singers.
Yeah, they did an amazing
Nice
job.
Summer concerts, we attended a few of them. Nice job putting that together, and also a nice job by the DPW maintaining the parks. They were beautiful, nicely done. And just one more thing, I know you had a few issues this summer with some residents that might not have been pleased with how some things were run. And I just want to reinforce that we are behind you 100%. And at no time should any of our department heads feel pressured or bullied and think about moving on from this town because of some irate residents, so.
And as is the DPW is behind you also.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Front, behind, whatever you want to call it.
Did you want to stay up there for a minute while we approve the road race here? Do you want to say anything about that at all?
So this road race started before my time. I think we may even be in like the 9th running. Like we even did a virtual one during COVID. We've slowly seen our numbers growing. Last year, I believe we had about 130 registrations. And it's amazing. It's just growing every year and people do look for it and track it down in order to be a part of it. So. Thank you. Thank you.
So, up next is the approval of the road race, and it looks to be the same as it has been for quite some time. It'll be Saturday, April 5th. Police have signed off on everything. Everything looks good to me. Any questions?
A long ways away.
Right?
We'll have the Easter egg hunt before this.
Actually, no, the Easter egg hunt is on
I would make a motion that we approve the foot race walking event.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Smith, aye.
Newman, aye?
Grants and I.
And then that brings us to our last agenda item, the field use discussion. And that is why we have both DPW and Recreation here with us. We do have the West Sterling Field area, and it is a town-owned baseball field. And we've had some modifications made to that field area without permission by the DPW, no cooperation. And so we're just here to kind of discuss how we go about this in the future with both Recreation and DPW.
So one of the other parts of this, not just specifically West Sterling, but all of our fields, when we started the field study piece, one of the things that they had looked at is the usage and how different sports affect that and the rentals that we do and whatnot. So we started also looking at our field use agreement regardless of anything else that's going on. So definitely taking a full view and trying to rewrite those to fit how we can both maintain them better and service everybody that needs them. Obviously, we know that we block off a lot of time for people that aren't using it at all the times that they have it blocked, and then we're tracking people down also to see if it's available for other sports that want to come in for a one day or a one-off as well. So looking at the bigger picture as well.
Right.
The field study also brought that to light for us in looking at our field use agreements.
So, who would like to start off? Anything in particular? Andrew, you look like you're...
I think Mr. Parker would like to start.
All right.
So before you get into this, I would just like to make one statement regarding this. I've been to a few DPW meetings that this subject came up, and I've talked to a few people about how it was handled by our board. And it was not the intention of this board to defer any responsibility onto any other board or department in this town. I just want to make that clear, and if somehow somebody feels that we might have been shirking our responsibilities by doing that, I want to, on behalf of the board, apologize for that. Perhaps there should have been a little more communication before we did what we did.
I will assure you, that's not the way we feel. I will get to that in a second. I put a lot of time into this. I tend to ramble. Bear with me.
Would you like to introduce yourself for those who may
Andrew
not know?
Parker, DPW board member. I'm highly vested in this particular scenario. Purpose of this joint meeting is to discuss a remedy and ramifications for unauthorized and failure to ask for permission, lack of a better term, for modifications to town property by another organization. I'm sure some people in here don't, well, I think everybody knows, but I'm just gonna go through a quick timeline here. Baseball, I'm still on the softball. Gibbs Baseball approached the select board, you people, and asked them to install a t-ball field. And you granted permission. Great, I'm all for it. Keep in mind, we don't want to take anything, none of us want to take anything away from the kids, first and foremost, no matter what. Gibbs approached you, asked for your permission to install this t-ball field, great. You granted permission. In doing so, they added something that wasn't on their site plan. I wasn't privy to the drawing or whatever they did. That's kind of immaterial. After they completed a vast percentage of the work, our superintendent Ryan got wind of something in addition to what you people approved. Ryan went down there to investigate, just to observe, and he saw what he saw, and what happened happened. When he left, he called me to ask for my opinion, merely as a safety factor. And I gave him my opinion, which was absolutely none. It is a safety issue, first and foremost. That's the second most important thing of this meeting, is children's safety. First is unauthorized work on town property. Second is, well, first should be the children's safety, but it's combined. After our discussion, he contacted Bill, which Bill contacted you people. He sent a letter to Gibbs, meeting. They never showed up. You passed it on to us. I don't agree with that. I think that was the wrong thing. However, I want to back up what you said. It's neither your fault nor anybody else's in this room's fault on passing it on to us. We are all in uncharted territory here with this issue. We've never had an issue like this. When I was in charge of softball fields, it was a simple call. Billy Tuttle, the fellow before him, hey, I want to do this. Yeah, no problem, but I want you to do it in this manner. Yeah, that's fine, we'll get her done. Click, done. It was a working relationship. That did not happen in this instance. And it's not your fault by any means. It's, you didn't know what to do. We don't know what to do. Bill doesn't know what to do. We're in uncharted waters here. It came to us, and I formally, the meeting after, regretted my decision on camera. The reason we, and I will speak for the other, oh, and by the way, Dean, our third member, is here. He came late, if you want to put that on record or whatever. We were all in agreement, because a major event was going on at the Gibbs, at Maypother Field within 4 or 5 days, I don't remember. We weren't going to try to make them remove it, and we thought it would hurt, impede the event. So we caved, unfortunately, and I regret that decision. However, we put stipulations on it, that there would be a gate, and that was my big thing, because a toddler could get through there. We wanted a fence for fly balls. We gave them 60 days to comply. They didn't comply. We had our meeting in August, which was plus or minus their 60 days. We did not know what to do. We are not a rule enforcing authority. That is why we called for this joint meeting. We're asking for guidance on what to do from here. first and foremost, is town-owned property. And not to ramble, but I just want to explain, because I know some people here don't know me, why Ryan called me for my opinion on the safety issue. I was a Sterling Girls Softball Association member for many years. I was in charge of fields, field maintenance, and equipment. I was on the rec board, and I'm still an advisor to the rec board with fields and equipment. I have coached on hundreds of softball fields throughout New England, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And I have seen probably 8 to 10 fields that are set up like they set up with that inner triangle. And when I say I've coached, we go for the weekend tournament style. This style field, no matter what, one person, at least one person gets hit by a fly ball when you're in the center of the fields. And that's why I say it's a safety issue. Someone is going to get hit. It's a liability on us. So back to the topic at hand. They've created an unsafe situation. That is why we, as you people, us as the DPW, the rec board has oversight on these modifications. We gave them our recommendations, our opinions, what we wanted. They did not follow it. It's come to my attention in the last couple of days that this is what they do. Not just this situation. This has happened with Gibbs before. I hate to use the word bully. It's not the association. And I don't like to single out one person. However, there's one particular person that has a bullying attitude towards us as the DPW, towards you as the select board, towards the recreation department. I won't stand for it. I don't know what to do about it. Again, guidance. We're looking for your guidance. There's a lot more issues with the organization, or maybe this one individual. I'm not sure. But it all comes from there. We don't have it with other sports. I mean, you get your little test, whatever. But not to this extreme. We need to do something about it. We own the town, or we own the property. And when I say we, I mean the townspeople. And the townspeople include, the townspeople have elected you people to make the decisions. They've elected us to make the mechanical decisions. They've elected or appointed a rec board, which, by the way, thank you, Mr. Smith, to push somebody to write their resignation to that point, I've had enough. I will not stand for it. She is one of our most valuable employees in the town. And it's absurd. And it's not just Little League. There's a couple other sports, or at least one other sport, that the same scenario is happening. What do we do about it? I don't know. Again, we're looking for your guidance. Like I said, there's a lot of other things involved, but the meeting tonight is about this, and the fence, and the not adhering to your decisions to our decisions. I do not want to get into the he said, she said, grade school drama. That's kind of irrelevant. There are other issues. I will be more than happy to answer any questions you have. I do have one kind of off-topic statement I would like to make. Facebook blew up today. I hate Facebook. It causes most of these problems. I do not, and I purposely did not go on Sterling Community page today to read it. It was forwarded. There were many things forwarded to me. I only read a couple of them. One of them was that the town, and when I say the town, I'm assuming they mean us collectively, took away $5,000 from Gibbs. I think they're trying to wind us up. And I'm here to tell you, we took nothing away. that $5,000 was, and I have the minutes right here if you'd like me to read them to you. And I'm very privy because I was one of the ones that voted on that $5,000 because I was on the rec department at that time. It was a one-time, one-shot deal meant for fertilization and upkeep and so on and so forth with the Maypother field. However, unfortunately, there was a regime change, there was a lot of stuff going on, it got overlooked. That was, meeting took place on January 28th, 2020. It was a one-time $5,000 reimbursement for fertilization, improvements, so on and so forth. It got overlooked. That's 4 more years that the Recreation Department reimbursed them $5,000. In my opinion, and in my words, they can word this in 2 different ways. They can take that as a gift from the Recreation Department, and they've obviously utilized it. However, they can take it as a gift and keep their yap shut, or they can take it as they need to repay us the $20,000 that we overpaid them. They can say however they want, but that's the bottom line. That's the end of my spiel. We have an issue, we're looking for your guidance.
I don't know what makes you think that we're any brighter than any of you. Except for you, of course.
I think it's a matter of taking back ownership. The more you give, the more people expect, and they are our fields. And if they don't like the way that we maintain them, then they don't need to use them.
So that brings me to another little slightly different dilemma. I will not take away anything that they've done. They're the most beautiful fields we have. They've done a superb job for the last, how many every years they've been there. They're always the best looking fields. We are not, and when I say we, I mean the DPW and or the rec department. We are not looking to take them over. They do such a great job, we would rather work with them. We don't want to work against them, but this particular instance, it's a safety issue and the bullying, it is the concern.
We're hurt by their attitude, and we just don't, we're not gonna put up with it.
So the safety issue, I went and looked at the fields myself to see what was going on. And before I heard how you felt about the safety issue of that triangle in the center there, and I thought it was the oddest thing, but I don't, I've never been in the triangle.
Unfortunately, I have. I haven't heard that. But I know my wife's got hit and one of my children was done.
Well, my thought was, if you're going to use the restroom, if you're going to the concession stand, anywhere you're going, you're walking through a field to get wherever you need to go. So I don't see how that area is considered a safe area to watch the game. And you're in the middle of 3 fields with balls. I don't know if there's 3 games going on at the same time, but you can't be looking at 3 fields at the same time to see where the balls are coming from. How many people are allowed in that triangle? You know, is there room to dodge? Are there kids running around at your feet and you're not paying attention? You should be behind the fence, in the stands, where you're supposed to be. That's just my opinion.
That is our opinion.
And I have your letter, I have what you told them, I have everything. They were invited to our May 22nd meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
To discuss this on the 13th, and they told that was little to no heads up. It's 9 days. I mean, I don't know. We all can make it if it's important, right? We have meetings twice a month. They were invited to your June 11th meeting. We've all been asking to have dialogue with them to try to work on this together. We're all here. There's one entity that is not. So that's very telling to me. I was very upset with an accusation that Ryan was not behaving in a manner that he should while representing the town. We all know Ryan. He has interactions with multiple businesses and residents on a daily basis, like multiple interactions. Never has anyone anything to say about
with Ryan outside our DPW meetings, and I think he's probably one of the more professional people I've ever met. That particular instance, there was another DPW employee there at the time. I spoke to him. He said it was not the case that as the accusations were made. However, again, I don't want to get into the he said, she said grade school drama. Unfortunately, we have to talk about it, but I don't want to get into it.
As you were saying, they are the people's fields. I also didn't like that they said they have all these volunteers and donors and whatever, and guess who wasn't involved or contributed anything? That's correct, our very own town of Sterling. Well, I believe that the land is owned by the people of Sterling, and that our DPW maintains the fields, the mowing and whatnot, maybe not all the fertilization. That is not free, your time is not free. The people of Sterling, it is a privilege given to them by the people of Sterling to use it. So to say that our very own Sterling is not contributing should be offensive to everyone in town who pays their taxes and gives that opportunity to the children of Sterling. So what do we do about this? We're in a tough situation. I believe they should adhere to what you asked them to do, because initially, when we approved it, it was that they were to work with the DPW for the job that they were doing over there. We appreciate the work they've put in there, but it was supposed to be a collaboration, and it wasn't. So all you did was let them know what they need to do, what you would have told them before they did the work. You know, now they're upset they need to go back and modify things. Had they worked with you before, it wouldn't be the case. So I think we need to make sure that they actually follow through on the items that the DPW asks them to follow through on. How we do that, whether it's us, building commissioner, I don't know who would be in charge of that. And then if they don't listen, then...
Even though I voted to keep the fence, I myself would like the fence removed. Regardless, it's a safety issue. Again, I regret my vote at that meeting. It was more, I caved because I knew there was a major event.
We all have.
Can I go back on that? I don't know. Yeah. But either way, whether the fence was removed or a net's put up, and my biggest thing was the gate. Because sooner or later, there's going to be a toddler in there, and we all know toddlers, They escape. They're like little mice. They're going to get out.
And if there's a bunch of people in there, the toddler can get through and you can't.
Yes.
So they're way ahead of you.
So... Thanks, Steve. So again, how do we enforce this? I hate to throw the ball in your court, but we are not a policy enforcing authority. We don't know what to do.
Up to a point.
Okay, first of all, you could always, your DPW, if you want to rescind that vote, you can do that. You just put it on the next agenda and then vote on it again. And I'm basically, with all of you, I think we're all on the same page. And what do we do about it? You gave them some guidelines. They haven't followed the guidelines. I would say, how often do they use the field right now? Are they playing fall ball up there?
They are playing fall ball, and what they reserved with me is every day, all day.
Up at?
What?
What? Up at Maypother? Up at Maypother? Every day, all day? Really? Interesting. How are they doing that? Who's playing? The children are in school.
I don't know. If you go up on the weekends, they're not there either.
I've been working in Princeton this week. I've been by there 3 days this week at multiple different times during the day. except for the tennis courts, I haven't seen a soul there.
Well, I'm thinking that, okay, here's the deal. Here's your guidelines. This is what we've asked you to do. You haven't done it, so therefore, the field is off limits until it's done.
But how do you stop them, Maureen, from going on?
You call Sean. You lock the gates. Just shut it, somehow you shut it down, big orange signs, whatever. But for them not to listen, and then...
They think they're better than us.
Well, I understand
You know,
and they probably are, but...
I've been here all my life. They're not better than us.
I don't think they're actually using the T-ball at this time. I think they're using the majors and the minor fields over there, so we have no grounds to close those.
We have grounds to close
We
them.
do? Okay, you can close the
Because
property.
it's town property. They were asked to do things several times. They were invited to a meeting, and this one person doesn't
Multiple
seem...
meetings.
Well, yes, multiple
I
meetings.
just didn't know because it didn't pertain to the actual field that they were currently using, if we could still shut it down, but we can. Okay.
Well, do something. I mean, it can't go on like this. You're gonna, if we don't fix it now, then come spring, it's gonna be the same issue. We're all gonna be back.
Hindsight's 2020. I know that Sherry is working diligently on rewriting the field use contract, which I have tried to assist her with a little bit of wording and stuff, and we're trying to prevent this from happening again. Hindsight is 2020. We never had to deal with this in the past because it was always a friendly working relationship.
I've honestly, Andy, I'm with you. Been here a long time, never heard of such a thing. I can't even think of one board or committee that would ignore an invitation from at least 2 elected boards. The townspeople elected all 6 of us, and the recreation director, who obviously works very hard to keep this under. To me, and back to what Kirsten said, it's an insult. It's an insult to the taxpayers.
Slap in the face to all of us, really.
And while Mr.
That's what an insult
Parker,
is.
while Mr. Parker is still up there, because you mentioned Facebook, and I did see they posted their letter to us on Facebook for everyone to see. And in that, it says that the DPW was no longer mowing the fields.
Right.
Like out of spite. And when I got this letter, I immediately came down here to say that is absolutely not happening, correct? Like, just to be sure. Of course I knew it wasn't.
Oh, yeah, no, that was written in the letter. It couldn't be further than the truth.
Correct.
I believe the letter came immediately after Memorial Day, which our focuses are elsewhere Memorial Day. However, we did mow that before Memorial Day.
Right.
We mowed that with our regular frequency. There was absolutely...
So for that to be put out there, for everyone to see, that our DPW was not mowing their fields and
It's a
that
bit
it was
loud.
unsafe, that's absolutely not correct. I made sure that was not correct, myself.
Thank you.
So, just so everybody knows.
I can assure you the DPW has done nothing in retaliation for anything that happened, no matter what anyone may
Correct.
think or say. There's been nothing of
And I know that. And I just
any of
want
that.
everyone else to know that.
Yeah, we all know it. We
Right.
just want the general public to know.
You gotta realize we have this, Andy and I grew up in this town, and when you pick on our boss, well, Brian, and you pick on a woman, you're getting us.
Right.
You're lucky.
So we need that,
Sorry.
we need that contract to be foolproof, right? Because
Yes.
whoever's sitting at this table is going to change. Whoever may be sitting in Sherry's spot may
Yes.
change. Whoever, and
And
whoever
our board will
may
change at some
It
point.
all needs to be solid, so that no matter who is sitting in whatever spot, you follow the rules, and it shouldn't matter who's in charge.
So, and my biggest question is, moving forward, what do we shut it down? I don't want to, me personally, I don't want to shut it down if kids are scheduled to play there. I agree with Maureen that shut it down, but not to shut it down to the kids. I don't know the best.
So we have their schedule, we know when they're there, right? And we can shut down that center triangle, right? At least for the, until they put up the netting.
I want to know, I need to step in here. because Maureen and I had the same reaction.
Announce yourself for the camera.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
Blaine Burchett, chair of the DPW. Maureen and I had the same reaction. Shut it down. There's certain behavior that is asocial behavior. This is atypical behavior. And it's for the kids. What are you teaching your kids? That it's okay to, if you go to somebody's property, albeit a town's property, and you do something to that property without permission, it's at least asocial and it's probably vandalism. Regardless of what it is that you do. So I think it's time for all of us to become adults, and unfortunately it means that this agreement has to be a little more ironclad.
Well, in that respect, she is working diligently on it.
Well, I think maybe
It's actually been suggested that maybe we seek somebody outside to help write this agreement.
Okay,
So
well,
it does a couple of things. It adds a little bit more professionalism than what I could actually do, but it also takes it off of my plate. It's not me telling them to do it. It is an outside entity that came up with these rules and regulations.
Can I make a suggestion that we invite Gibbs in? This is one last time to our next meeting. So one last time. And as far as closing it down, you don't want to close down the fields themselves, but the triangle. Go to the police station and get a lot of that do not cross yellow tape, or I'm sure Ryan and Jeffrey could take care of that. Gladly. You know we'd be thrilled.
Has anybody
Jeffrey.
tried, I looked up Gibbs and looked at who's in charge, and there's a gentleman, Jared Lushart. I don't know if anyone has spoken to him, who is apparently in charge he's the director of fields and equipment. So I don't know if that may be a better contact person. I can try to.
The DPW board meetings have Zoom, which means that they can attend those meetings from the ball field if they needed to.
That's
They
not
can do
happening.
that.
Right.
I understand.
But perhaps we invite more than just one member
might
of
be
Gibbs.
stepping out a little bit here.
Right.
Yeah.
Does Mr. LeBrecq let the rest of the board know? I mean, they all got Facebook, I'm sure they know, but does he announce to them that we've invited them? I don't know. We have no way of knowing that.
Exactly.
We try to contact their secretary and have her send it out to their entire board.
Yeah, that's probably what we need to do.
To go back to when they came and asked for that, it wasn't Mr. LeBrecq that came. It was another member of this board. I don't remember the gentleman's name, I'm sorry. But it wasn't Mr. LeBrecq.
So it's really institutional behavior, because we can talk about behavior, but we shouldn't talk about individuals, right? Because it's really the behavior of the group, whether it's their leadership or not, is really not the town's concern.
Yeah.
We have to think of it from a behavior standpoint. And I use the term asocial because I want to use polite language. We're all really upset. I know we're all really upset.
You're such a nicer person than I am. Anyway.
It's a good thing he's not here. He didn't bring his gun. Thank you.
Oh, Jesus. But what
Just kidding.
I would go along with Kirsten. She said she would reach out to this Lazard, first of all, and give them one more chance to come in and rectify the situation. And rectifying it means follow your guidelines, and I would support that, whatever the DPW thinks is a safe way to go, and the recreation. And if they don't, then yes, close down that triangle.
So my
Sounds like a
knee-jerk
sign.
reaction is they've had too many chances and no. However,
I get that.
However, my rationalization tells me, because it's more, the board, Gibbs is more than one person, and I
Right.
think we're having an issue more so with one person. The rational side of me says, if we can somehow make contact with a bunch of their board members to sit down and discuss this, I wouldn't be opposed to one more try.
I agree.
I think that's the important thing to note. Like, we're just trying to like sit down, come to a table, sit down and have a civilized discussion instead of just lobbing things back and forth to emails. It doesn't get anybody anywhere. And that's, I don't know, that's all we're trying to do. I don't know if they think it's like some kind of jury trial or something, but all we're trying to do is sit down and have a discussion, iron this stuff out so that everyone can have a good working relationship for the next however many years.
Do they have a board meeting, a regular board meeting?
It's not like a posted thing, it's a private organization.
What their schedule is, I don't know, but I do know that I've heard that they do meet regularly as a board. What their schedule is, I have no idea.
We can find that out.
Right, it says it's monthly on their webpage.
We can get the list of members and we can find out, and like you said, the Saturday, I think that's the big umbrella of gives. And again, I think that people need to know that this is a very different situation than any of us have experienced in the past, ever. I can't even remember ever seeing anything like this happening. Somebody attacking employees is not unusual, but in the manner that was done both to Sherry and to Ryan and to Jeffrey, unacceptable behavior. And yes, I'm with you guys. We fix it. Fix it. So we don't need a motion or a vote or anything?
No, I don't think so.
You all set?
Yeah, I am all set, but I think that if we do have another meeting and it's the final straw, we need to have some teeth behind it. We get 14 days or we'll shut the park down. I mean, whatever we do is not going to be popular.
A plan of action after.
4 strikes in baseball.
Yeah.
We can take care of this.
Yeah, we've been following out lately.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I agree with David. Yes, you don't just say, hey, listen, you fix this or else. You say you fix this within a certain period of time, and maybe you can give us some guidelines as far as how long would it take to put that police tape up.
I mean, we gave them 60 days from our initial vote.
That's true.
And they made no attempt to do anything.
Yeah.
And I don't remember where I saw it, but I saw some email that they would like reimbursement of $10,000 for that nonsense. Well, let's break this down.
They owe us 20.
They owe us 20 in theory.
And take 10 from that. They only owe us 10 now.
There you go. However,
that's without a calculator.
Their figures are so far-fetched. What's a gate gonna cost? $300-400?
That's what I was.
What are you gonna spend on signs? $200? It's been about 8 years since I've purchased nets, but nets of the size would have required probably about $1,200. Let's call it $2,000. Who cares? $2,500. Not their $10,000 that they want reimbursement for this stuff. I don't know what their game is, but they're throwing darts at a wall.
Baseball. It's
baseball.
I make a motion, we move on.
Sounds good.
And before I close, I would like to give thanks to Sherry for the amount of time and effort for what she's done for rec department.
Yeah.
I just want to make that.
And sorry you have to go through this.
Yes.
She loves it.
All right, I'm sitting down.
Anybody from rec have anything they want to add to this discussion? All right, Chair Bershad, did you want to adjourn your meeting?
Thinking that we adjourn at this point. I would like one statement that I would recommend that we put some teeth in that agreement. I'm now speaking not as a chair, but as a citizen, an outraged citizen, that I would like to see some teeth into people who basically, we want them to work with us. But if they can't or they don't, we want them to be treated because they're setting a horrible example for their children. And other, they don't have to pay any respect to other people's property. I mean, this is a horrible thing. So we have to stop it now. And you stop it with some agreement, in my opinion, that has some teeth.
That's where we're
He asked for
heading.
something, and that's where we're heading. So I would like to see the agreement at some point be a lot more aggressive than I think any of us would really prefer to have. And with that statement, I'd like to adjourn our meeting. We have to have an emotion? I think so. Do I have an emotion?
We all have emotions.
I second it.
All right.
For the DPW.
All in favor?
Chair Grady, did you want to adjourn your meeting?
Hi, Grady. So as chair of the rec board, I've been on this too long that I can't even remember. But I also was a member of the Little League board back in the day for about 5 years, and I was also the president of the softball board for many years as well. And just a little analogy that I always used when we were on it was to treat the fields as you were a tenant and the town's the landlord. So you treat it like an apartment, like you can make improvements and you ask permission and you get permission and then you make these changes for the better. But you always got to listen to the landlord. So I just wanted to say that because that was the analogy I'd always used when I was on those boards for any changes that were made. You think of it as if you were living in an apartment and what you could do and what you can't do.
Thanks, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's just something I used in the past. So can I have a motion to adjourn our meeting? All in favor? We're all set.
Thank you. All right, Bill, what you got for us?
Nothing else to say.
Okay, that's good.
Motion to adjourn. No, I don't get to make one. No update on any of the grants other than the risk management one that we had received as of the last meeting, so we've got that in process. Obviously, the fair went off pretty much without a hitch this past weekend, and want to thank all the volunteers and everybody that's been involved with it, vendors for coming from all over the place, and everybody that's been involved and all the people that went. I think it may have been a near record-breaking year, so very, very good. Obviously, DPW, thank you for everything you did, and SMLD, and then everybody in this building and the others that did their piece.
Police and fire.
Public safety as well.
And Dave, all the money he raised, being in the dunk tank.
Those that were in the information booth.
Dunk tank.
He was in the dunk tank. How many times? 40?
Too many. Just getting tired climbing back up the ladder.
Good for you, I skipped out this year.
And you got swimmers here.
Oh, yeah, great.
A couple weeks ago, we had, I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, Congressman McGovern's farm tour came through town and went to one of the local farms, Pineo Farm. They switch that up every year. They go to about 24 over a couple days throughout his district, going through and looking at what farmers do across Massachusetts. I think farmland makes up about 0.2% of the land in the state, so it is not a lot, but obviously they have a big impact. So last week, Lafayette's event. Every day blends together now. So a thank you to the Historical Society. We've sent over the ADU language with the passage of the new housing bill to Town Council to see what is acceptable and what we have and what we may have to change for this year's town meeting coming up. Yesterday, Kirsten and I went over to the Senior Center and met with one of the EOBA, Executive Office of Elder Affairs directors or assistant secretaries, just to get a check-in with them, and Sheila, obviously. So that went pretty well, and obviously it's a busy senior center and many programs, and they shared some information that we can obviously use moving forward as well. 9/11 Remembrance you'd already mentioned. Friday chamber event, the Good Morning North Central will be up in Gardner, so we'll be attending that, Stephen and me. I believe Ryan is it next week, the DPW Building Committee?
Yeah, next Wednesday.
Is coming up, so we'll get that ball rolling. I know David's on that, and Mark, your group. And obviously, Blaine will be there as well, along with the two citizen members. The Neshoba Valley Managers Group is also going to be meeting shortly, and I have my meeting with the Public Works Policy Committee of MMA coming up, and the Equipment Expo for the Mass Highway Associations next week. So I'll typically stop down at some point and see some of the folks that I used to be pretty close with when I was out in Beckett and started here. And I think all the other projects are pretty much knocked off or have been mentioned at some point. Sherry covered a bunch of them, thanks to Rec, but I think we're in pretty good shape. Actually, Sarah's not here, never mind. I was gonna ask her on one of them, but we're good.
How about, you want to talk about the MART monies?
Oh, that's right, I didn't write that part down. So the total was 13 and change, which would get us through this fiscal year. That is the RIDE program that is subsidized by a grant currently. So we'd have to find that for this year, and I'm not sure if there's a future grant or if it's something that MART would seek us to continue to look to fund our 25% portion in the future. But looking for some guidance from you folks if this is something we want to continue on. I know it's something that we had discussed and looked forward to now that we have a hard figure based on what it is, and that is an increase in the fares, if it's something we want to continue with.
Does the 13 is from when to when?
October, when they expect it to run out through the end of the fiscal year.
So October to June, basically? Okay. And we're looking for funding for that. So did you talk to any of the committees yet as far as what they might be able to contribute?
I know Stephen had mentioned Planning Board revolving could contribute some. EDC meets 2 weeks from now, 23rd, 28th, whatever it is. So we can ask them then to see if they have a contribution that we could grab. Otherwise, we'd have to look at some other sources. I don't know if formula funds from the COA could work, not a lot, but something to contribute, and we can manage the rest either through select board or administrator expenses. But its ridership has definitely increased. I know it had shown June or July was low, but the most recent data was another increase. So it's definitely something that's being used pretty regularly.
So we should look into that and probably have it on our next agenda. Did they send you numbers of riders? No?
We had that in our last packet.
Oh, okay.
I don't have
So
it off the top of my
that
head.
those were the regular, okay.
Yeah, that goes back to when it was implemented last summer.
Yeah.
Started off and then almost doubled from where it originally started off. So we're nearing 300 rides a month.
What? No, Andrew, behind you. Mr. Mackey, you think the Friends Group would be interested in throwing in a few bucks? Wouldn't that be a good idea? Well, I'm just guessing that a lot of the riders are seniors.
Some probably on the weekends when
Yeah, when the buses aren't running. Well, the buses don't go everywhere they need to go anyways, and the timing might be off.
and that goes from I think 5:30 in the morning till 10 at night. So it's got a longer.
It's kind of weird to see the bus going through town 9 o'clock at night. Okay.
All right. Anybody here for public session? Well, then I would
Blaine's getting ready to
welcome
run.
a motion.
Well, can I just reiterate what Bill said and we all feel? Great fair this weekend. Everything just seemed to go so smoothly. A lot of people. And when I was in the booth, I had several people come up and ask me how they can get into the fair next year as far as a vendor, which is always nice. They must have seen something there. And yes, the Lafayette thing, that was fun.
Well attended.
Well attended.
500 people probably.
Yeah. It was interesting, historic. And no, I don't remember it, David. Or Dean. Dean would throw that in there too. And again, reiterate too, thank you to everybody that participated, the whole volunteers for the fair. Fabulous job. DPW, of course, SMLD and police and fire. Those volunteers worked their butts off. They did a great job. Very
Particularly those on
organized.
parking.
Huh?
I said those on parking really,
They were
never
really.
stopped.
When I went at 9 a.m., there was one guy there, and then when I went back to work the booth at 7, he was still there, and when I left, he was still the one standing out there.
You're lucky. One year I was up there.
Yeah.
No parkers showed up. So I got in my car and I started parking cars. It was great. They didn't even give me a vest.
probably friendly too.
Huh?
You're so friendly, I bet.
Yeah. As always. I'll make a
But it is
motion.
amazing that an entire fair can be pulled off by just volunteers.
Yes.
And it's a functioning airport
Yeah.
days before, and it's a
Yeah.
functioning airport today.
Right.
It's like when I showed up and Tom looks at me and goes, "You're back." We're all back. 40,000 people back.
And obviously the landowner and the business owner as well.
Yeah.
Has to be there.
Also, it's cool, the post office showed up and had they have the carnival stamps out there right now, and one of the stamps is actually a picture of the Gillette horse on the merry-go-round. That's been on the horse for years and years and years. So, go buy your stamps. There's only one out of the 20 that has anything to do with Sterling.
Hey, better than none.
I suppose. Yes, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Smith, aye.
Thank you.
Good night.